Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Cecilia. Where the hell is she? Oh yeah. I'm back. Carla. Oh, there you are. Awesome. And let's stop recording.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Super. All right. Let me just move you over here. Okay. Welcome to this presentation where we will learn how to approach preparation for college applications in the 2020s. And we'll talk about the big changes over the past few years. So my name is Cecilia Johnston, and I am your presenter today. I want to thank Eileen Whalen, who is one of my former boot camp parents, for inviting me back to Oxnard High School. And even though he's not here, I did want to say hello to Mr. Urias, who I got to know when he worked for the Ventura County Board of Education a few years ago. So this is my bio. I'm not going to go over it in any detail at all because we have such a short time together. But if you want to know more about me, you can ask Eileen, or there's more on my website. So if you have questions during this presentation, would you please save them until the end? And the reason for that is that we have such a short time together, and I'm going to be going very fast, and I may be answering your questions in the presentation. This is being recorded, and it's going to be posted on the PTSA YouTube channel, and there's also going to be handouts that will be made available to you. So, how has the pandemic affected college applications? It seems as if there are new changes, twists, and turns every time that you turn around. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to show you what your student can do during the next year or two to get ready for college, and really what you don't need to worry about. So I think that the lens that we need to view college admissions through is to identify what is it we can control and what is outside of our control. We need to focus on those things and those factors that we can influence. Now, I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the next year or two. There will be additional changes. We know that, but what we don't know is out of our control. So the key is to keep focused on what we can control. And as for everything else, just think of Elsa and Frozen, right? And let it go. I will say that the classes of 2023, 2024, and 2025 have more certainty than the previous 3 classes of high school students. Colleges and universities and the high schools have seen the outcomes of almost 3 full college admission cycles and have a much better understanding of this new reality and how it works. So this evening, we're going to focus on 5 areas that we can take control of: college admissions testing or not, academics, extracurriculars, college research and visits, and life balance. So the number one thing before anything else that your student should do is to establish their own college dedicated email address. Do not use the address assigned to you by your high school. So that's an address that usually ends in edu. In many cases, that address goes away when you graduate. And in many cases, there are firewalls so that and filters so that nobody outside of your district can send you an email through that email address. And that's not very good for college applications. So you want to have a very professional sounding email. You want something perhaps like your name, right? So mine would be cecilia.johnston@gmail.com, let's say. You don't want something like, hot beach babe, or I actually had a student, his was Casanova, and that was not his first name or his last name. So keep it professional, but this is really the first thing that students should do. This should be an email address that is reserved for all things college related. Nothing else, just college related things, because you don't want to lose emails, not be able to find them. And in most cases, colleges and universities are going to be communicating with you through email. So you want to make sure that it's easy to find those emails, those important emails that are going to be sent to you. At this point, check it every week and clean it out, right? But when the student becomes a senior, the student should be checking it every single day, just to make sure that they don't miss some important email. All right, ACT, SAT testing. This is the biggest concern that high school families have right now about applying to college. Well, that's probably not true. Paying for it is always a big concern, but in the preparation for it, really it's the testing. And the big question is, should your students start preparing to take the SAT or the ACT? Well, what was an abnormal situation for college testing has become the new normal. We're looking at much less emphasis on standardized admission testing for entrance into college. There are several major factors that have contributed to this change, but it was trending this way even before COVID. The issue with the SAT and the ACT is twofold. Number one, it's big business and it can be very expensive, putting up financial barriers for families that cannot afford the cost of taking the tests or sending numerous score reports to lots of different schools. In addition, there has never been a research study that's found any correlation at all between how a student does on the SAT or the ACT and how they're going to do in college, unless that study was paid for by SAT or ACT. And by the way, that was supposed to be the purpose of these tests. They're supposed to be predictive of what students will do well in college. So that brings us to the second factor. Research has found a direct correlation between family income and high test scores. The wealthier a family is, the higher the test scores of the student. Families with more income, they can afford to pay for tutors and test prep that lower income families just don't have access to. So colleges and universities were de-emphasizing or even eliminating college admission testing from their application requirements even before COVID kicked in. And by the way, the University of California system has been a leader in this change. So what does this mean? What does test-free, test-blind mean? What that means is these schools, if they are test-free, or sometimes you hear the term test-blind, these schools will not consider your students' test scores at all for admissions purposes. Your student could have the best test scores, the highest test scores ever, and submit them, and the school will not even look at them. Okay, they'll look at other factors. What does test optional mean? Test optional means the student has a choice. If the student chooses not to submit test scores, they are not going to be penalized in any way, shape, or form when it comes to college admissions, and in most cases, the scholarships that these schools give, okay? So a student can either submit test scores and they will be considered with the other parts of the application, or if the student decides not to submit test scores, then they will not be penalized in any way. The colleges and universities will not ding them for it, and they'll just look at the other parts of the application when assessing the application. So what's my college admissions testing advice? Well, for the classes of 2024, 2025, and 2026, that's freshmen, sophomores, and juniors currently. You know, if you want to take that PSAT in October, if you're going to be if you're a sophomore or a junior, that'll give you a baseline, okay? And by looking at that baseline, you can determine, you know, do you think that you want to put yourself through studying for the SAT or the ACT? Will you be able to get really high scores? Because quite frankly, it's high scores that are going to matter, right? With the college, with the colleges that are test optional. Interestingly enough, you do not study for the PSAT unless you're a test taking superstar. Unless you think you're going to score really high on the PSAT, you don't need to study, because the PSAT is practice. Those scores are not reported to colleges and universities. And the only reason that you would study for it is to get a really high score so that you could qualify for the National Merit Scholarship Program. And by the way, you need to have taken the PSAT as a junior to be able to do that. And another fun fact is you don't really have to take the PSAT to qualify for the National Merit Scholarship. Interesting. Anyway, that would be the only reason to study for it. Basically, if you're going to take the PSAT, let it be your baseline. In your handouts, there is a link to a Google document where I have all kinds of information about testing, much more depth. It's in a Google document form because it changes all the time. So I'm constantly updating it. So that link is going to be in the table of contents that's going to be the first page of your handouts. Now, for the class of 2023, current juniors, almost seniors, most students will not need to take the SAT or the ACT to get into college. And that is probably going to be the story for every student who's in high school right now, okay? Most students will not need to take the SAT or the ACT to get into college. Now, there are a few exceptions. The first exception is if a school or major or program to which you're applying requires or recommends college admissions testing for admissions, or a lucrative scholarship for which you are applying requires or recommends college admissions testing, or you are a test-taking superstar who would probably attain stellar test scores of maybe 1440 to maybe 1600 on the SAT or 32 or above on the ACT, and there are schools on your list that are test optional. Really, with the test optional schools, unless you have really high scores, it's really not worth going through the pain of studying for and taking the SAT or the ACT unless there's another compelling reason to take the SAT or the ACT. There was another exception, which was if you were an athlete who was hoping to play Division I or Division II sports, but the NCAA will be permanently suspending testing requirements. They are going to be voting on it later on this spring. And I'll tell you, they're going to be permanently suspending them. Another exception is if you're applying to a service academy, a military service academy, such as West Point or Annapolis, they're still requiring the submission of test scores. Homeschoolers, there are many schools that are still requiring them to submit test scores. If you are interested in applying to a foreign university, let's say in England or, you know, Japan, and test scores are required, okay, you may have to take the SAT or the ACT, but contact the university first, because these universities are well aware that there are testing issues for US students and may be able to accept alternatives to testing, such as AP scores or an essay or something like that. So if you do decide to take the ACT or the SAT, please, please, please don't take both. They are actually very similar to each other. And what I see is students end up with essentially the same equivalent scores on both of them. Again, there is more information in my Google Doc telling about, you know, the slight differences between the ACT or the SAT, but they really are very similar to each other. Every school that looks at college admissions tests will take either the ACT or the SAT. Don't take the optional essay on the ACT. The optional essay was discontinued by the SAT last June, and no schools in the United States are requiring that optional essay. So there's no reason to pay extra if you're going to take the ACT to take that optional essay. And by the way, you may have heard of SAT-2 subject tests, which were little short tests in certain subjects. Those have been discontinued. No colleges and universities are requiring those anymore. Now, for our freshmen, the class of 2025 and later, there's big changes coming. The SAT is going digital. So the new digital SAT is arriving in spring of 2024, and that's going to be after the class of 2024 will have been done testing. So it's going to affect the class of 2025. So the new SAT will be taken on computers, and the student can use their own computer, or College Board, which owns SAT, is going to provide computers for those who don't want to use their own computer. It replaces the current SAT, so it's not like there'll be two options. The fall 2023 PSAT is going to be in that new format. So that's the first time we're going to see that new format. There will be some content changes, but the big news, besides the fact it's going to be completely computerized, is it is going to be reduced. The time to take it will be reduced from 3 hours to 2 hours. Big changes. So watch for more information about that to come out. For classes of 2023 and the class of 2024, the current paper and pencil SAT, fill in, you know, the bubbles, that's all that's going to be available. Now, we're getting a lot of questions about AP testing. The fact that you took an AP test is by itself, whatever the score, a real plus in college admissions. If you do well, it can be a small additional factor in admissions, but just the fact that you took that test, they're saying, that student has challenged themselves, which is good. Most schools will look at your AP tests, and if you did well, it's just added value. If you didn't do well, they're not going to ding you for it, okay? But if you did well, that's a good thing. But it's not going to carry the same weight as ACT scores did or SAT scores did. It is not a replacement for SAT or ACT testing. And just so you certainly don't want to spend your time and money to take an expensive AP test course. There are test prep companies out there that, because they are losing money because students are no longer taking the SAT or the SAT or the ACT, they're pushing the AP prep courses. it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. There's lots of free AP test study support on the AP website at College Board. The colleges and universities, they primarily use the AP test scores to either give you college credit, which is great, or to place you at the right level. So in English or in math. Now, something I do want to mention is that when we're talking about, and this is going back to the ACT and the SAT, when we're mentioning the test-free, test blind, I want you to know that the UCs and the CSUs, are going to be test-free permanently. So the UCs have already announced that. The CSU Board of Trustees is voting on it this month, and I will tell you they are going to go test-free also. So what that means then is that if you are a student who is only going to be applying to California public universities, in other words, the UCs and the CSUs, you don't need to take the test or worry about it at all. And when it comes to the California private schools, the vast majority of them are test optional. So the bottom line is that most students will not benefit from taking the SAT or the ACT. So relax, concentrate on the other things that colleges and universities are going to consider. So let's talk about some of those things. And by the way, in the packet of handouts you're going to find a list, a ranked list of what colleges and universities look for in high school students. Now, I don't have time to cover all of them, but I'd recommend you take a look at that list once the handouts are made available. The number one factor that colleges look at is academics. They look not only at your GPA, the student's GPA, but also the rigor of the student's curriculum. Luckily for you, your students go to high school in California, where they're encouraged to complete a pattern of coursework called the A through G requirements. If you haven't already familiarized yourself with this list, please take the time to go over it. It is a crucial piece that determines which colleges your student will be eligible to apply to. You see, the California public four-year universities require, at a minimum, that all of their applicants have completed the required number of A through Gs with a grade of C- or better. So the required number is indicated on this slide by the blue mortar boards, okay? A student needs to have completed that coursework to be eligible to apply to the UCs and the CSUs. Now, just remember this pattern of coursework is different than the high school graduation requirements. For example, A through G requirements requires 2 years in Area E language other than English. That's not required for high school graduation. However, take a look at the tan or gold mortar boards. Those indicate the additional number of recommended courses above and beyond the required number. If a student completes the required number of A through Gs while they can apply to the UCs or the CSUs, it does not guarantee them an admission to the UCs and the CSUs. And the UCs and CSUs are getting harder and harder to get into. So take a look at the additional recommended courses above and beyond the required number. If your student is interested in applying to selective universities, then completion of the recommended number will help make them competitive applicants. And the good news is completion of this pattern of coursework will make the student eligible to apply to just about any college or university in the United States. So finishing those A through Gs, that's important. And if you can complete the recommended number as opposed to just the required number, that is even better. By the way, these need to be completed with that C- or better. Ds are not passing for purposes of A through Gs. Some other class choice considerations. Take classes that challenge you, whether they're AP, honors, IB, dual enrollment. Try to take a math course during senior year. Even if you've maxed out on math, still try to take math during senior year. Colleges and universities want students to practice math every single year of high school so that they are ready to go when it comes to college math. If the student is interested in STEM and has a choice to take calculus, take calculus. Because if you're going to do a STEM major, that's science, technology, engineering, or math in college, you're going to have to, in all likelihood, take college calculus, and taking calculus during high school is really going to help you. I highly encourage students to take 3 to 4 years of language other than English. And if you take that 4th year, California has a biliteracy seal, which is a super thing to be able to put on your college applications that you're a candidate for that biliteracy seal. So what's better, an A in a college prep course or a B in an AP or dual enrollment class? I get this question all the time. Generally, you want to take the course level that fits you the best. What is it that you can handle? Are you challenging yourself without drowning? That's essentially it. While colleges they like to see you challenged, but they certainly don't want you to drown. They don't want to see you get D's and F's, right? But if you can handle a higher level course, do it, even if you might get a lower grade. Colleges and universities look at students holistically, and GPA is an important factor, but it's just one factor, okay? Just for an example, the UCs consider 13 different factors. The CSUs can choose from over 20 factors as they are evaluating applications. The rigor of curriculum is just one of them. So is a GPA, though they're the most important ones. A question that comes up is, what if my students' grades were affected by online learning during the pandemic? As long as the student shows improved academic performance during the next school years, it really should be just fine. Colleges and universities love it when students are on an upward trajectory. And on the UC application, on the common application, which is used for a lot of other schools, there's a spot where students can explain what happened. Teamwork. Communication with teachers and counselors is so very important. Knowing and communicating with your teachers and counselors is especially vital because so many students weren't on campus last year. Encourage your student to go in and introduce themselves. Parents and students should stay in touch with their school counselor because that's going to help the student to stay on track with their academic goals so that the counselor really knows what is it the student wants to do after they leave high school. If a student wants good grades, read for fun. So many students stop reading for fun, and it's tragic. Read and also learn about current events. Boy, is there a lot going on. And develop those study skills. Even if school is easy right now for your student, now's the time for them to develop those study skills. They shouldn't wait until they get in college to do that. Truly, the more a student knows about the written word and the world around them and how to absorb that information and show that they have that knowledge when it comes to their academic work, the better off they're going to be, whether they're doing college admissions testing, whether they're writing essays, really everything that has to do with getting into college. When it comes to extracurriculars, activities, leadership, they look completely different now, and that's okay. Colleges and universities understand that many students didn't have opportunities to do the usual extracurriculars during the pandemic. What colleges and universities are going to be looking for when they look at what the students' activities are is they're going to look at, was the student flexible when the pandemic happened? Are they creative? Do they have intellectual curiosity? They love it when students go down a rabbit hole with self-study and there's, they learn all about something that they're just fascinated with, like black holes or the ukulele or rebuilding an automobile engine. They love that. Persistence, just sticking with it. Giving back to your community is still very, very important. And if you missed out on the opportunity during the pandemic, now's the time to start that up. Now, it's important. It doesn't have to be an organized activity, such as Boy Scouts. It can be something that the student is doing on their own. And by the way, hobbies are great. Also, if it's a student who doesn't have time for extracurriculars because they're taking care of their family, colleges and universities absolutely recognize that. And that is a worthwhile activity. College visits, they're opening up again. There's all kinds of things available. I highly encourage you to, even if your student's a freshman, start looking at schools. Do windshield tours, just drive through the campus. There's virtual tours online, there's live tours, there's going to be college reps coming to your high school, whether it's virtually or live. Virtual college fairs and lots of live college fairs coming up. Take advantage of those opportunities. And while you're looking at colleges, remember, it's all about the fit. There needs a college that is the right fit for the student needs to have all three of these fit factors: academic fit, social and emotional fit, and financial fit to be the right fit. So get a taste of different colleges, sample different colleges and universities. Even if the student is not necessarily interested in a particular school that you just drive by, a visit or even some research will help the student focus in on what they like and what they don't like. And that is going to become their fit factors. Remember, parents, you may fall in love with a school and your student is like, meh, right? Remember, it's the student's fit that's important here, okay? And by the way, that picture, it's of the Las Vegas buffet, right? Let your students sample the lobster. Don't get concerned about the cost of attendance yet. Let your student sample all different types of schools. It will help them figure out what their fit factors are. Finally, life balance. Life balance is an adulting skill, and high school is the time for students to work on their life balance, their adulting skills. Don't wait till they go to college. Set your student up for success. This is an area where parents can be incredibly helpful, as we have all, as adults, had lots of practice at calibrating and recalibrating our life balance between work, family, play, our health, and all of the many things that we have to do. Not many people have a favorite graphic, but this is my #1 favorite graphic. It illustrates the conundrum of high school survival. If you have good grades in a social life, you get 1 hour of sleep a night, right? If you have good grades and you're getting enough sleep, you have no friends. If you've got enough sleep but you've got a great social life too, you're failing all your classes, right? Life balance, let's figure that out so we can be right in the middle of that Venn diagram. In your handouts, there's a nifty list of life skills from Cal State Channel Islands, which is really helpful in identifying areas where you can help your student develop those skills that will help them manage the various aspects of their life. Changes are coming. I actually am going to be retiring at the end of this academic year. This is actually my last workshop at the area high schools. And I've had 13 years of working with truly the best students and families I could possibly have dreamt of. But I just want you to know, our plan is we are transitioning the program to someone else who's going to continue our work and support our families. So our workshops and our college applications boot camp, which Eileen is an alum of, they are going to live on. and the class of 2023 is going to be taken care of, and everything will continue after my successor takes the reins. So if you want to learn more, we have two things for you. We have the Jumpstart class, which is for all high schoolers and their parents, over 2.5 hours of pre-recorded videos and digital handouts. You can purchase that online at my website, and it's $40. Boot camp, we're going to continue that. It's going to be by subscription. There's going to be over 20 hours of pre-recorded videos and all sorts of digital handouts and other materials for students and parents. It's a step-by-step navigation of college application process. It lasts over a year. We're still working out the details. It's coming soon. Just check in my website and you will see the information about it. Oh, okay, time for your questions.
All right, we do have one here.
Wonderful.
Yes. How many colleges should a high school senior apply to?
That's a great question. I recommend between 8 and 14 or 15. The lower end is if your student is applying to a very specific type of school, such as a school in music performance, then maybe at the lower end. At the higher end is if your student is applying to selective schools. You have a high performing student who's applying to UCs or Ivy Leagues or other selective schools. You really need to be applying to more schools, and everybody needs a balanced list that is balanced between those, shooting for the stars schools, those schools that are back pocket, and those schools that are true matches or targets. Any other questions?
We had a couple of people ask, so I'll say this for everyone while we're waiting for more questions to come in. But with regards to the handouts that you were speaking of earlier, I just want everyone to know that we are going to be getting those to you. It'll either be through email from PTSA, or we're going to see if we can figure out if the school can do it through Parent Square. We're not sure which one, but we will send those out. So. Okay, we have another question here. How important are AP test scores?
AP test scores, like I said, they don't take the place of SAT or ACT test scores, but I always encourage students, if you are taking an AP course, please take the test. First of all, you don't know how well you're going to do. And second of all, if you do take it and you score well, it can add a little bit to your application, and you can get, depending on the school that you end up going to, you can get college credits, which means you're going to not have to take as many college courses as you normally would to graduate. Or if it's a school that doesn't do that, then the school generally will look at your AP test scores, and based upon them, maybe will put you at a higher level in a sequence of courses, such as in English or in math. And that's a plus also. Any other questions?
So the only other question here that I see is, do you have any advice on college application essays?
Yes, I do. I do. Well, okay. If you do boot camp, we have a whole section of that. We have a guide that has to do with the essays. There is an amazing website that has all kinds of free advice and free information, and it's called Essay Guy, GUY, like an SA male person, .com. He's amazing, absolutely amazing. And there's so much on that website for free. And then he also does a course, and it's very reasonable. So, but basically, the way that they're done is a student self-reflects, in other words, reflects about themselves and their defining qualities and times that they use those defining qualities. And they base their essays around that, because the purpose of the essays is not to tell the school how great you are, because the school can see that from other parts of your application. The purpose is for them to see who you are and how you think, and get a glimpse of your soul and what makes you tick. That's the purpose of the essays. Any other questions?
Yes, there was one other question. When are college applications due in general?
In general, the college application season goes from November 1st to about February 1st. Now, our UCs and our CSUs are due on November the 30th. And for many students, that's their first deadline. But there are some early admission type programs that some schools have. The UCs and the CSUs don't have them, but they're called early decision, early action. And those applications are due, some of them as early as October the 15th, many of them November the 1st. I know that Cal Lutheran, they have an early action program, and their first one is that application is due November the 1st. So really they're due the second half of the fall. So I think you're on trimesters. So it would be at the end of the first trimester.
Okay, and then the last question is whether or not your website that you have now will remain after you retire.
Yes, so it's going to stay up at least for another year, because we're doing our programs virtually and pre-recorded for the next year as we do the transition. And then after the transition is complete, then my successor is going to take it over, and she'll probably have her own website, but you'll get redirected to it.
Okay, awesome.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining me. We'll get those handouts out to you, and have an absolutely wonderful rest of your week and a very productive rest of your meeting.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. We really appreciate you being here and taking the time to educate all of us. I know all of us are excited.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cecilia, for coming. Appreciate it.
That was amazing.
Yes, it was.
That was so much information. Okay, so